Hello and welcome back. This is part 2 in our series Buying a House in France. If you haven't seen part 1 about location, then do check that out first. This video is all about the viewing process.
Right, the first tip I have is if you're looking at properties in rural France, don't forget to take into account the time it can take to get from one property to another. Even properties that look quite close together on the map, you might be surprised at how long it can take you to get there. The other thing is, if you're looking at properties that are either large properties or properties with a lot of land, if you like them, you can be there for really quite a few hours. So you don't want to be rushing from one property to the next, so allow yourself plenty of time. We found that it's better to go out of season. Agents are more available. You're seeing properties at their worst, so actually if you like them then you'll love them in the summer. Also, because there'll be less people viewing the properties, you may find you're able to get a better deal on the property price. Our first house hunting trip was in September 2018. It was just the two of us, no children then, and we came in a campervan. It was really fun. It allowed us to explore France really easily, and we managed to have a nice time as well as house hunting. One thing to bear in mind with that is that campsites do close over winter, so a lot will already start closing in September, and by mid-October most will be closed. The good thing about France is that most areas have airs, which are places where you can pull up in a campervan and you can stay overnight, generally for free. These are better suited to caravans, as quite often they won't have toilets.
The negative would be that a lot of estate agents were thinking that we're here for a bit of a jolly and that we were just on a holiday in a campervan and let's have a little nose at someone's house, which is quite common. They didn't take us seriously sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Another tip is to try and view as many properties in a day as possible. If it's the same estate agent, then they can just see what's on their books that is similar and they'll just go, oh, we'll take you there, we'll take you there. So that might be an option. Initially, we weren't very organised and we would just call up the estate agent or send them an email to say, can we see this property tomorrow? And obviously, during still a busy period in September, they would say, no, maybe next week. So for that first week when we initially looked at houses, we didn't actually see any because we weren't very organised and prepared. But that's fine. We were in the camper van and we could enjoy France. We decided to get organised and utilise some technology to help us remember where these places were, book them in advance. So we used Google Maps to drop little pins where you could annotate it with the link of the listing, any notes, whether it was kind of like a thumbs up, not sure, maybe view it again. Because actually when you would go back and look at the property, the photos on some of them were really bad and made it look worse than it was. So that would be a really good advice, is when you're doing the viewings, try and take some footage if you can.
Yeah, because if you're viewing multiple properties, they very quickly all blur into one and it's hard to differentiate, isn't it? Our second trip was in February 2020, and this time we had a little baby, so we had to be much more organised. We also had a clearer idea of what we wanted and what we were looking for, so that helped. This time we were based in Gites, and the advantage was that you could come home and you had much more of a base at the end of each day. It was a bit easier for doing stuff on the internet and a laptop, and warmer in the winter.
So when you're driving with a car, maybe it's a short trip for a week, you do have to plan it a lot more. But the downside with a car is that if you have a base location, let's say a gîte, you do have to, obviously, you're going to be driving back a lot more on yourself. You can't just say, oh, we'll go look down here and then we'll stay here and then we'll drive there and stay there. You kind of have a base that you're then going back. So you will do a lot more miles.
When we came out for our first trip, we were looking for a place with quite a lot of land, as we wanted to set up a glamping site. A lot of the places we viewed weren't right, and it was hard expressing exactly what it was that we wanted. Quite often either the houses were larger but really, really run down, or they were absolutely tiny, like little cabins. And yeah, we struggled to just find that perfect place.
Because of the budget, right? So you would search online, what's your max budget? Ours was about 150. You're gonna struggle to find both those things under that budget, even here in France. So we upped it a little bit to 200 and there was one that was listed literally for 200 that we went to see. It was a house that had been renovated downstairs by the builder owner. The upstairs was ready to be converted. It had only a little private garden, it had a little paddock if you wanted to have horses or animals, and it had a giant woodland that was on a hill, and at the bottom of the hill was the Vienne River. It was massive in terms of what you got for the price.
I think the house being done was really appealing to us, having seen so many wrecks of places, and we really fell in love with it. Having the river at the bottom of the garden, we could really visualise what we could do with that woodland area. And so we put in an offer.
And I think it was quite a generous offer.
But it is normal in France to offer under the asking price.
Yeah.
And that is what we did. It wasn't ridiculously under.
I think it was 10%, then maybe 5%, and then literally on the third offer we went, okay, we're asking price, but I don't have any tools or machinery to manage the woodland. And he had this tractor, so we like a small tractor, and I said, will you throw that in? Because I thought, oh well, you're not going to want to take that back to the UK, are you? But clearly he did, or wanted to sell it on. So yeah, there was a different attitude, I think, if you're buying from maybe a British or foreign owner compared to a French owner.
We left a bit disheartened though at the end of that trip, didn't we?
Yeah, but I think on reflection, it probably was a blessing in disguise that we didn't get it at that point. And obviously, if you want to even think about things further, we probably wouldn't have had our children. So everything does work out. And in this situation, did work out in the end.
Yeah. And also there was a racetrack nearby, which was a bit of a factor at the time. And we thought, oh, it'll be okay. But I think actually where we are now, and you just go outside and you hear the birds, actually having that zoom, zoom would have been really annoying. So just to touch on something else that you mentioned, a lot of rural properties are inheritance. So the owners have died and then it's multiple siblings, maybe even cousins, who are selling the property just to get a bit of money, which does mean that you can get really good deals. So it's always worth offering under the asking price because quite often that is accepted. When we came out for our second trip, our viewing criteria had changed a bit. We now had a baby and we thought that creating a glamping or camping site from scratch wasn't really going to be feasible. So instead we were looking at somewhere where we could create a gite or something similar for rentals. On that second trip, we were much clearer on what we wanted, which made it easier and harder in some ways. A lot of the properties were just instant no's, which was a little bit depressing. And actually, we didn't see this house until we were making the journey back up north to go home.
The other thing is we didn't take any photos, we didn't do any video. We didn't really have much time. We had a baby that wasn't sleeping very well. We were knackered. So yeah, we didn't do anything. And actually this place was the only one where I was really wanting to have a good look round. We had a really good estate agent who showed us the local town. She really sold it really well. It had been reduced, and I think it had just been reduced, and obviously no one had seen it because of the time of year, and also the pandemic was just about to come. So it was just about to come. The pandemic was on the horizon.
This one was the only place where I think we felt some kind of connection. We could see the potential, and yeah, we really wanted to spend some time looking around at the property, looking around the land, and yeah, I definitely felt more from this than from any of the other ones we'd seen.
I think what appealed was its location. Going back to the location, I think that's really important, is the location of where it was situated. So we are not far from the main road, which obviously gets you to the town and you can do all your amenities, etc. However, it's quiet, but it also has neighbours, and you're not just kind of there on your own. What do I do in emergency?
Yeah, so there were quite a lot of properties we viewed, and they'd be in the centre of the village, and we'd be like, no, this isn't what we're after. And so then the estate agent would be like, okay, I've got one for you. And they'd take us out, and you'd be like going 15 minutes down a little track, and it would just be a house completely in the middle of nowhere, and we were like, no, this is too remote. And you'd sort of start to feel like you're being too picky, but we knew what it was. We just had to see that place, and this was it for us.
I don't think it's perfect though.
Of course it's not perfect. Our budget doesn't allow for perfect.
No.
So one of the last properties that we viewed was, it looked good on paper. When we got there, the guy had a lot of cats, and we're both allergic to cats. So that's a bit of a, when it's covered in cat hair to start with. And then the owner himself insisted on accompanying us around the tour with the estate agent. And it all got a bit awkward, didn't it?
Yeah, he was American, right?
Yeah, a character.
A little bit eccentric. And I quite like people like that, whereby he started planting some trees, and he was explaining what certain trees he had done, and he believed that the axis of the Earth was in the wrong position, and it was shifting back to its original position, which meant that eventually the equator would be right where we were in the middle of France, and that this place needed some trees because it's going to turn into a desert or something. And I'm fascinated. So I knew straight away when we turned up, property's not for me. But I was honed in on this guy, and I was like, I want to know more about you. And Bex is just talking to this stage and looking, going, what? Oh, get him away from him. Oh dear, he's gonna start spouting some crazy
this
things.
Is a no. Let's just move on.
These are the types of characters you'll find out in France, and I'll probably turn into him one day.
So that's a bit on our viewing experience and how we found it. Next up is the buying process.
If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and we'll try to answer them. And if you have found this information useful, then hit the like button, and we'll see you on the next video.